If you don't know the name Stuart Rhodes, you may have heard of the name Oath Keepers. Yeah, Stuart Rhodes is the leader of that militia group and is accused of seditious conspiracy in his role in the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Prosecutors say, listen, they planned this thing, Kevin, and we're getting ready for weeks with paramilitary training, with helmets and battle gear to stop the certification process of the 2020 election.
Yeah, Tom. I'm telling you, prosecutors spent an hour on opening statements, a full hour setting the stage of what they wanted the jury to know about the Oath Keepers and its leader Stuart Rhodes. This case brings the most serious charges to date in the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. And with serious charges comes great pressure for attorneys involved on both sides. Joining us now is Roshini Rajkumar, an attorney and host of the podcast Crisis Files. Good morning, Roshini. How are you?
Hello, Kevin and Tom.
So tell us about the charges in this case, because these are incredibly serious charges.
They're incredibly serious charges. And, the timeline of this is very interesting, right? So we're going, approaching 2 years since the events of January 6, 2021. And it's not to say that that's unusual. It does take a while to gather various details, gather facts, and actually figure out, are there charges? What are the correct charges? But these are very serious. The allegations that these prosecutors are saying is that these Oath Keepers were basically plotting this even before the 2020 election was formally declared. And that is really huge. Now, the layers of it, though, this is where things get a little murky, is how do you really decide, who is discerning what, and how believable, I guess that's what it's going to come down to. How believable are each of these defendants as well as the people who are bringing the charges? So they are very serious charges. You two and I have talked about this day in our history for various reasons in the past, but this kind of takes it to this new level if these people are convicted.
You and I have sat through a lot of trials, covered a lot of trials, and we know that trials are about facts and evidence, and opening and closing statements are kind of showy. They're not as much about facts and evidence. Yes. And sometimes when I see elaborate opening statements from either side, it makes me think they don't have as many facts and evidence to back it up. Do you think this elaborate opening statements are a good idea to set the stage?
Kevin, that's a really great analytical or analysis that you just made there. You're right. Trials are supposed to be about facts, figures, numbers, dates, chronologies, but they are also about advocates, right? So each side wants you to see something in a certain way. I think if something is a slam dunk, you do not need a highly elaborate opening statement or even a highly elaborate closing statement. What you do need to do is have a sense of who the finders of fact are and what's going to really speak to them. And that's how you set up the best opening statement possible. But yeah, I think we have to be a bit suspicious of everyone in this situation because politics are very much behind everything that's connected to January 6, 2021.
Yes. And sedition, as you've mentioned, is a very serious charge. So is conspiracy to commit sedition, which is the crime prosecutors accuse the Oath Keepers of committing on January 6th. But this is very hard to prove, right? It has to be more than just talk. I think the last successful trial was way back in 1995. Do they have that kind of evidence, do you think?
I just don't. I don't know, Tom. I'd really love to see everything they had. Obviously, we're not going to until it just comes out to the public eyes. But it is a very serious charge, and it can't just be on hearsay. It can't just be on conjecture. It absolutely has to line up with reality. And, you're dealing with a lot of emotions here. You're dealing with people that are very vocal or very passionate about their beliefs. So something that may have been recorded, we're hearing about and hearing of these different taped recordings or conversations. when you're in that heat of the moment, there might be some things that are said that could be interpreted one way, that are meant one way. And then a year and a half later, when you're sitting, in a courtroom and listening to some of that same audio, it might not have the same effect. It might not actually mean or match with the charge of sedition. So these are the kinds of things that we all need to be discerning as the public, and then those listening and discerning it for real in the eyes of the law have to also be very clear about.
Yeah, and Stuart Rhodes, this leader in the Oath Keepers, he says that he was just there to be ready in case Donald Trump enacted the Insurrection Act. But even prosecutors say that's just an excuse. That's something he's trying to hide behind. But as you mentioned, these things become very political. Do you think that the prosecution will try to provide any evidence that Donald Trump was going to implement the Insurrection Act?
Well, I mean, I would like to see it. I mean, if they do, we have a very different situation, right?
Yes.
If they feel like they have that, we have a very different situation. But we've talked before on your very show about the suspicious nature of some of the things when it comes to the Justice Department and Donald Trump and different bodies, charging authorities and Donald Trump. I mean, there is just not a lot of good faith with those parties with one another. And so the reality check that we all have to look at is really understanding when something happened. Was it written? How was it conveyed? Was it some random cryptic tweet, or was it actually a call to action? So how something was said, the mode of communication, of any kind of communication, will come down to really mattering here.
So you have common sense and you have the letter of the law. If you're going to overthrow the government, my common sense says this isn't the way you do it. You just show up on January the 6th and overthrow the government. They're too powerful. But in the letter of the law, could it be what they did is sedition?
Well, it could. I mean, it could, but it is such a strong charge, and the founders who created that in our Constitution really had something specific in mind, and this also has to be seen through the eyes of the Constitution, Kevin and Tom. We have a very wide range of freedom of activity in our country, freedom of speech, expression, really almost anything. I mean, you can burn a flag in the United States of America and you're not supposed to be charged for that, even if most of us think that is contrary to good sense or taste or patriotism. But those are the kinds of freedoms. So there are certain things you can do and say in our country that you really can't be charged for or put in jail for. So that is what is going to, in my mind, my kind of theory on this, not having looked at anything special other than what's out in the public realm, that's what's really going to come down to here. It's like, how much of this was this patriotic, puffery versus actual sedition? That's really what it comes down to in my mind.
Yeah, we are looking forward to this and hearing more from your perspective. Thanks so much, Roshini Rajkumar, attorney and host of the podcast, The Crisis Files. Roshini, great to talk with you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.